I'm really thankful to be able to have Brent come and talk to us today. I was just little when Brent moved away, but I'll introduce him, and then we'll give him as much time as we can. So Brother Brent W. Roberts is currently the Managing Director of the Special Projects Department of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. His responsibilities include overseeing site acquisition, design, construction, and maintenance of all the temples worldwide, as well as special construction projects such as MTCs, welfare facilities, and church historical projects. Prior to his current position, Brent served as the Managing Director of the Meeting House Facilities Department, where he oversaw the planning and construction of and the maintenance of all church meeting houses worldwide. He also served for 7 years as the Director of Church Headquarter Facilities, which when he was doing that, he gave our young men and young women a tour of the conference center, which I wasn't lucky enough to be there for that, but I remember hearing about it. Before entering church employment, Brent was the Associate Vice President of Utah Valley State College, now Utah Valley University, over facility operations and facility planning. Brent is the son of Lemoyne and Jeanette Roberts and was born in Tremont, Utah. At the age of 3, the Roberts family moved to Bothwell, where he was raised until he was 18 years old. Brent attended Bearver High School and graduated in 1983. Brent attended Snow College in Ephraim on a baseball scholarship. Upon graduation, he was drafted by the Cleveland Indians in the free agent draft and played professional baseball for 2 years. After baseball, Brent continued his educational studies at Brigham Young University, where he was awarded both bachelor's and master's degrees. Brent later received additional graduate degree in public assembly facility management. Brent has spent much of his time in the church in leadership callings, both in his ward and stake. Brent has served served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Ireland Dublin mission. He has served as bishop, stake president for the Utah Orem Lakeview stake in Orem, Utah. Brent and his wife Ramona are the parents of 6 children and have 15 grandchildren. Brent and his wife now reside in West Jordan, Utah. Brent, in his free time, enjoys his family, grandkids, hunting, vacations, and most of all, spending time with his wife Ramona. He attributes most of his success, both personally and professionally, to parents, a loving family, and a community that were able to overlook many of his faults and provide a lifetime of examples for him. Thank you for coming and speaking with us. We'll turn the time over to Brent.
Thank you, Bishop. He was really little when I was here before, but I do remember him well. His dad, of course, was the only scoutmaster, one of the only scoutmasters that I remember. Taught me so many valuable lessons, and so grateful for that family and for all they did for me. You got to push the power, Bishop. Who was here in 1983? I'm sorry. Hopefully I'm a changed man since then, but I remember years before that when they just remodeled the chapel. And we were so excited as a family to come and take a whole pew in the middle. We were so excited to be there, and that's when we came to church. I think it was 6 or 7 o'clock at night. Remember, we came back for sacrament meetings. But what a blessing. The chapel has changed a little bit since then, but it's wonderful. So I am the good-looking one in the middle. You might remember my mom and dad and our family. Mom and dad passed away, but our family is spread throughout Utah and Idaho and doing very, very well. So it is wonderful to be with you. Our home is no longer there. I don't think so, anyway. And this is where we grew up. And here is my family now. My wife Ramona and I have had 6 kids, 15 wonderful grandchildren, and we just got back from a week with them having a family reunion. So it's all about family for us. So today, brothers and sisters, I don't want to bore you. I want this to be interactive. If you have questions, please ask. I just want to emphasize that being involved in this work is an incredible opportunity, and that the Lord himself is hastening his own work. You've had the blessing, as I've had, to watch President Nelson under the direction of the Lord make multiple changes, including the increase of temple announcements. He said, "These are exciting days. The Lord is hastening his work right before our eyes. It is thrilling. It is rigorous. More is required from each of us, and more than ever before, and more is being given." This is a quote that he uses oftentimes that came from the cornerstone ceremony of the Logan Temple. And you've heard it before, but every foundation stone that is laid for a temple and every temple completed lessens the power of Satan on earth and increases the power of God and godliness, moves the heavens in mighty power in our behalf, invokes and calls down upon us blessings of the eternal God and those who reside in their presence. So if I were to emphasize anything today, regardless of the pictures you'll see of construction and perhaps pictures that you'll see of beautiful temples, it is that we are completing them according to the plan of our Heavenly Father, according to the Lord's plan and in the direction of the First Presidency. Elder David A. Bednar, in a meeting recently I was in with him, he was the executive director of the Temple and Family History Executive Committee, turned to me and he asked me where I was from. And I says, "I grew up in Bothwell." And he says, "I have no idea where that is." And I explained to him, just outside of Tremont. "Oh, yeah, okay. Did you grow up on a farm?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Did you in any thought when you were a young man ever think that you'd have the blessing and opportunity of being involved in temples?" And of course the answer was no. I remember Mom and Dad multiple times, almost every month, getting together and leaving to go to the Logan Temple together. And I always wondered why they took their suitcases with them, but they always went to the Logan Temple. And setting a precedence and setting a wonderful example for me and my siblings. But it isn't amazing. Elder Bednar then said, "I'm from Southern California. I was a young man and never in my life imagined that I would be sitting on the Temple and Family History Executive Council making decisions on where, when, and how big temples would be throughout the world." And he said, "I stand all amazed at the love Jesus offers me." I say the same to you today. I stand all amazed at what the Lord has done for me, for my family, and for all of us, giving us the blessing and opportunity of having multiple temples throughout the world. President Nelson has said, "My dear brothers and sisters, construction of these temples may not change your life, but your time in the temple surely will." I remember sitting in General Conference in 2018 hearing that, thinking maybe I was the only one there that realized that construction did change my life, as well as being time in the temple. What a blessing it's been. So, temples, 195 operating temples, 7 temples under renovation or reconstruction, 42 new temples under construction, 106 temples in design, 350 announced temples, 168 by President Nelson. In contrast, in 1982, when we left the ward at that time, 20 operating temples. I remember the reason I used 1982 was because I remember sitting in a, just in the wing over here, sitting in a Sunday school class, and I believe the teacher was Reed Harris. Remember Reed? And Brother Harris handed out a sheet, and it was the Salt Lake Temple with all the temples in the world around it. I remember thinking to myself, wouldn't it be great if we could go see all of those temples? Well, I have actually done that. I've actually seen those 20 temples, 12 of which we've reconstructed or remodeled. But imagine if it was your quest to see 350 now. Temples will dot the earth, prophesied by our multiple prophets before. You can see where they're laid out in this graphic illustration. And there's the 20 temples. President Nelson said, the Lord is directing us to build these temples to help us think celestial. God lives, Jesus is the Christ, the church has been restored to bless all of God's children. So what goes into design and construction of temples? Anybody ever wonder that? I think the number one question that I'm asked, first of all, people come up to me and they say, what is it you do? And I tell them I'm the managing director of the Special Projects Department. And they say, oh, yeah. And then they look away for a minute and they think, and then they turn back and they say, well, what is that? And I tell them, well, we purchase the property and we design and we construct and maintain all the temples worldwide, as well as other facilities, all but meeting houses. And then they look back at me and they say, but who do you work for? And I said, well, I work for the First Presidency and the presiding bishopric. Then they look back at me again and they said, but who was in between you and them? Because obviously it couldn't be me, they think. And I said, you're just stuck with me. That's it. It's me and the best staff in the whole world, all 1,800 of us. And we do everything we can to do what the Lord wants us to do. We follow a set of principles. I share this with individuals because I want you to know that under the direction of the First Presidency, all the design and construction of temples, of which we report to them monthly on, are built and done under divinely granted keys and authority. Each temple is fully reviewed and authorized by the First Presidency of the Church. So the First Presidency will review every design. This year I'll design 38 different temples that we'll take to him that he and the First Presidency will review. They'll look at the renderings, they'll look at the colors and the patterns and the fabrics, and they will make a decision, yea or no. They're heavily involved. President Nelson especially. Each temple represents the best the Lord has to offer the Lord's house. They should be constructed of prime quality. The design and location of temples should fit into local circumstances rather than making local circumstances fit to the design and functionality of a temple. And of course, we also follow the words of Nephi, and I, Nephi, did build a temple. And I did construct it after the manner of the temple of Solomon, save it were not built with so many precious things. For they were not to be found upon the land, wherefore it could not be built like unto Solomon's temple. But the manner of construction was like unto the temple of Solomon, and the workmanship thereof was exceedingly fine. So let me give you an example of how a design of a temple would be. This is just an example of St. George. Who had a chance to go to St. George and see the open house? It turned out wonderful. It was a long 4 years because of COVID. In the middle of it, it caused us significant delays with supply chain, etc., but it turned out wonderful. The First Presidency reviews everything. So I go into the First Presidency and I show them a picture. I said, President, this is a picture of the entryway to the St. George Temple. As you can see, it's very crowded. It was on a street. It's right, not necessarily safe. ADA access was not perfect by any means. And I said, we would like to build it similar to this. And they look at that rendering and they approve the rendering. Then we move on. We build the temple, and then I show them the completed temple. And this is the completed St. George entry. We were able to purchase from the city of St. George, the street in front that allows a beautiful plaza, more parking, safer environment, and a beautiful garden. This was what the lobby of the temple looked like. As you can see, the craftsmanship had been remodeled multiple times, so St. George had lost in many respects its pioneer craftsmanship, similar to Logan. And we were able to show them a rendering and said, President, we'd like to bring some of those things back. Here's a picture of what we'd like it to be, and here's how it turned out. We showed them the baptistry and what it was like before renovation. We gave them a rendering of what we thought it would be like. And this is the completed baptistry. It's an interesting situation when you sit in front of the First Presidency and you show them the rendering that they had approved years earlier, and then they can look at the actual product. I keep telling my staff, I said, it better look like we rendered it. Don't leave out the font or something like that. Make sure it's there. The endowment room in St. George. The proposed rendering and one of the instruction or endowment rooms completed. So the First Presidency has the blessing, and they ask for it, to go through every single temple that's designed or under design, and they look at 5 or 6 specific rooms, those that I showed you right now. They pre-approve those in a rendered view. This was the pre-renovation. This was the rendered view that they pre-approved, and this was the final product. This is ceiling room. We show them a ceiling room. This is what it was prior. This is what we proposed. Quite a drastic change. The ceiling rooms gave us the opportunity to bring back more of the cultural heritage, the craftsmanship for pioneers, and this is the final product. Like other temples, they have a priesthood room in St. George. Unfortunately, St. George could not use the priesthood room for years. It hadn't been used in capacity for over 30 years, primarily because the joists are so weak that the PSI only allows about 25 people in that room. And so we were able to fix that for them. This was the proposed rendering and the room completed. The bride's room. I always tell the brethren, just get over it, because this is a beautiful bride's room. You guys get grooms, you get a locker. That's what you get. And we don't even give you a mirror, so just get over it. You'll be fine. You're just lucky somebody's marrying you. You'll be all right. You should be pleased. This is So there's a number of designs out there. Everyone has their favorite. It's amazing when you get into this business how many members of the church believe they're an architect. I get notes, and every member a missionary. It's every member an architect for me, or a designer. Notes. What do you do this and this? And I graciously say, that's a good idea. We'll try it next time. And just a few temples been dedicated in the last year and a half. Linden, Utah Temple has 2 baptistries as well because of the amount of youth. So how are temples determined, and how are they determined the size? It's honestly, I keep telling everyone, I tell the First Presidency, it's based upon faithfulness. If there are faithful adult full tithe payers, the key number for us when it comes to adults, and youth in the area drives the temple. Also, distance of travel throughout the world, but not so much necessarily in Utah. But the size is driven by adult full tithe payers that can attend the temple, also adult full tithe payers that can work in the temple. Now you'll say, why don't you use recommend holders? If you go worldwide, there are more adult full tithe payers than there are recommend holders, because many people have not had the blessing of going to a temple because the distance of travel or economic means doesn't allow them to do that. They're still faithful full tithe payers. What we found when we build a temple is those adult full tithe payers, all plus about 10%, become temple recommend holders. So the term "you build it and they will come" is absolutely true when it comes to temples as well. Red Cliffs just dedicated a few months ago. Taylorsville a couple weeks ago. Late in last Sunday. Bangkok, Thailand. Salta, Argentina. Every one of these fit into the culture and into the area as most appropriately as we can and still be a temple. Coban, Guatemala, this is truly up in the mountains, just dedicated 2 weeks ago. Puebla, Mexico. Different sizes, different shapes, based upon the amount of people who will attend and who work in those. Now, we don't redo it every time. The floor plans are almost identical in many of these temples. And so we keep the floor plan, we just decorate a little bit different on the outside. Urdaneta, Philippines. President Oaks just dedicated this 3 weeks ago. So, brothers and sisters, this truly is the Lord's work. It's not my work. It's not President Nelson's work. It is the Lord's work, and He provides a way for us. Does that have sound hooked to it?
City, but it's much more than just a building.
Construction of the Bangkok, Thailand temple began in January of 2019. Anurag Keo Chao is hired as the construction manager. Bangkok, Thailand, a fertile land of rich spiritual history, landscaped with famed temples. And now a new worship center is opening. A majestic temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Towering nearly 250 feet, for a limited time, this house of the Lord is opening its doors to the public for free tours.
It's a beautiful building in a remarkably beautiful city, but it's much more than just a building.
Construction of the Bangkok, Thailand temple began in January of 2019. Anurag Keo Chao is hired as the construction manager.
I didn't know anything about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But from the beginning, in my heart, I know temple is the holy place. So it means a big responsibility on my shoulder. 4 years after the construction, I want to know what I built. Why this temple is so important for all members. Why everybody just want to come to sneak around during construction. I used almost 3 months to learn the gospel. I realized that this is the thing that I'm looking for. Every Sunday when I attend the church, I feel love. Not only love from the God, also love from among the members. I say with my full heart that I am really happy that I become the member, because now I feel more peaceful in my life. Every day that I come here, I have the feeling I am very proud to walk in this temple. So for me, this temple means everything. This temple is also my baby.
So Arnaud was he was a project manager, the project manager, working for the contractor. He didn't work for us. He was contracted by us. Not a member of the church, and he was just amazed about how many people would come up to the construction fence and try to peer through the construction fence to see what was going on, as if they could see something. He shared with me an opportunity that he had, and he looked at the outside of the fence. He was on the third or fourth floor of the temple, and he looked outside of the fence, and there was a whole bunch of youth there, and the youth were dressed in their suits and in their dresses. And this was during construction, and it was dusty, and they were all there, and they were walking around the outside trying to peer through the fence so they could see the temple. And he thought to himself, what on earth are these crazy people doing? And why are they dressed up? So he inquired of our missionaries that were on site, and the missionaries had the blessing and opportunity of teaching him the gospel, of which, of course, he was baptized about 6 months before the dedication. Just a wonderful thing. The Lord truly is in charge. Hearts are touched when it comes to temples. I'd like to share just a few experiences that I've had the opportunity to be blessed with. How many of you ever been to La Paz, Bolivia? Anyone? So it is a very populated city. Tried to look up before I went down there. I tried to look up what the census said, and the census didn't really say anything. It was like 8.5 million to 12.5 million. I think I saw every one of them the day I was there. It was absolutely crowded. But look at the homes, and then think about this. We have to build a temple, which means we have to somewhere find about 4.5 to 6 acres in that mess to buy it. So my teams were down there multiple times. We sent out our consultants who looked for multiple options and found very few, and they were scarce. About 3 months into the search, they came back and they said, we did find one, and we think it would be perfect for a temple. I sent down my director of real estate. He went down, he took a look at it. He said, it's perfect. Unfortunately, the family will not sell the property. They absolutely won't sell. And I says, well, why won't they sell? Well, they've had it in the family for over 100 years. They've had multiple, literally thousands of offers to buy it. It's in an area near an upscale area that's sustainable. It's a beautiful area. For La Paz, it's very beautiful, but they're holding on to it because their father, who had passed away about 10 years earlier, said, don't ever sell this piece of property, because this piece of property is for a special purpose, so don't sell it. And I had the chance to go on site and meet with their representative, which was a daughter. She had a son that was been educated in the United States at Purdue. He spoke good English. He could translate well. We talked about special purposes, and she says, "Oh," I said, "What kind of special purpose did your father intend?" And she said he was an incredible religious man, Roman Catholic, and very stout, very strong, very stern in his religion, but he always thought that it was a special place. So I had the opportunity to talk to her a little bit further, and I shared with her a picture of a massing and what we thought potentially could go on the site. And this is about 4.5 acres, and it was the only 4.5 acres in an area that was just an incredible area for La Paz. And she looked at it and she said, "That looks like a church." I says, "It's meant to be. The spire reaches to heaven. The architecture is Bolivian architecture. It's meant to look like a church, but for us it's more than that. It's the house of the Lord. It is a temple." And I had the opportunity to share with her my thoughts and feelings about what a temple was and talk about what goes on. I showed her then the actual rendering of what the temple may look like. And this good sister who had spent 20 years holding onto this property, not selling it, began to cry. And she said, that is beautiful. Are you telling me that you're going to build this on this property? I said, we are. And members of the church who are worthy will come to the temple. And they will come here and worship the Lord Jesus Christ. every day? And I says, well, usually every day, but Sunday and Monday. But yes, every day. We were able then, as her heart was touched, she went back to her family, and they, of course, sold us the piece of property. Being the negotiator I am, I asked if she would donate it, but she wouldn't donate it. So we still had to buy it. You can only go so far. So a rendering of what La Paz, Bolivia will be. Another great opportunity I had was in Belém, Brazil. Brazil had been a difficult place and still continues to be a difficult place for us to build, and won't allow us to almost import anything. Everything needs to be Brazilian, which is okay because they have what we need, but they won't allow us to get occupancy permit when it's done. And we'd been struggling on 3 temples that we'd finished 2 or 3 years before that of getting an occupancy permit. And the reason being is because the building official had not received his compensation yet. And I remember specifically on this one, the building official came out and met with the project manager he was a Protestant, the building official was Catholic, and he said, this can't be done. This project isn't done yet. It's not finished, meaning you haven't paid me yet to sign off on it. And he said, oh, I understand. I just want to take you to the most beautiful room you've ever seen. And he walks him in, stands in the celestial room. We're not allowed to take furniture in yet. So we're there. The building is finished. This is the celestial room. You can see the Brazilian stone. He stood side by side with our project manager. This is the building official for Belém, and said, what is this feeling? And the Protestant, of course, the project manager says, I'm not sure, but I feel it every time I come in this room. We had the opportunity to share with them, of course, through our missionaries that are on site, what they were feeling. They went through the temple a little bit further. They looked at a few other rooms. They walked out the temple, and for the first time, our occupancy permit was signed that day. And we were able to move into the temple the next week, which made us scramble because we anticipated it would take us a year to get it, and we got it in a week. So we had to hurry to get the furniture in, but it was beautiful. This is the final rendering or final pictures of the celestial room in Belém. Anybody been to the Democratic Republic of Congo? In 2008, H. David Burton, the presiding bishop of the church, sent me to the Congo and said, I need you to go look for meeting house sites and a potential temple site in the future. But I want you to do more than that. I want you to start a welfare program. And I reminded him that I was a manager of special projects, not of welfare department. He didn't care. He said, no, I want to put together a welfare project. He said 95% of the return missionaries that leave from this country and come back, they come back unemployed. And they have no skills whatsoever. I want you, Brent, along with some of your staff, to create a school to teach them basic skills in construction. Level, plumb, those type of skills. Not amazing, but give them some skills. Well, we were fortunate, the Lord blessed us, we were fortunate to find a few retired man and his wife was willing to go. Both spoke French. He had taught in the construction management school at Salt Lake Community College, and he was willing to go on a mission. So we sent him over there. We developed a curriculum, we developed books and manuals, we did our marketing. Of course, it wasn't hard because so many people wanted the opportunity, and we graduated from that school, and in the first 3 years, about 250 young return missionaries, young men who now become electricians, became plumbers. The reason I say that is I was over there about 2 months before a final inspection, and I met 25 of them that had been employed for the last 2 years on the temple site, were able to work on the temple. As you can see, because of the area being in the Congo, it's not as elaborate on the outside as others. It is a stucco finish. But it even goes farther than that. If you look to second missionary from my right, from your left, his name Kyle Houghton, dear friend of mine. His father Stan owned a construction company called Westland Construction. We were at lunch one day. He was doing the typical marketing that all contractors do, and they meet with me. Say, what can we do for you? What can we build for you? What can we help you with? And I jokingly said, well, if you want to go to Africa and the Congo and build a temple, that'd be great. Hoping that they would laugh as much as everybody else with me were laughing. And he says, I think we can help you there. I about fell off of my chair. I said, you can help me there? What do you mean you can help me? This is the Congo. You don't even speak French. He goes, no, I don't speak French, but we know someone. And I said, well, who is it that you know? And these are some of the graduates from the program. He said, we know a man named Norman Kumasi. Norman's in the center. And he was in the parliament in Kinshasa for the DRC. He was an influential politician. He was also part owner of the Congolese Airlines. There was a coup in the late 80s, early 90s, where many of his colleagues were killed, some of which on the parliament floor. His family was in jeopardy. He said literally he left the country on the last flight out of the Congo, fleeing with his family for his life, and he landed in Washington, D.C. And he was in Washington, D.C. as a refugee. He was put up in government housing but had no job, had no money, didn't have a green card, of course, and he was starving to death, he and his family. He told me the story. He remembers kneeling down and praying for the Lord to help him and to help his family. Within a few minutes, a knock came at the door, and a man with he said, the largest box of food I've ever seen, knocked on the door. Called himself president. I don't know what he was president of. He was obviously the president of the stake, which he would learn later, and shared with them food. He said, this man, with an answer to prayer, literally saved my life, saved my family's life. He also asked him if the missionaries would come teach him, and they said, of course. And so the missionaries came to teach. And those missionaries, as I showed before, was Kyle Houghton, son of Stan Houghton, who owned Westland Construction, from Spanish Fork, Utah. Imagine that. Someone from Spanish Fork, Utah, knowing anyone in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. He had taught him, he baptized him. He was now a member of the church. As soon as we had announced the temple, he came forward and said, we at Westland want to build the temple, and Norman will help us build that temple. Norman agreed to go back to Congo for 3 years as we built the temple and become a semi-assistant project manager. He helped us with everything you can imagine. He had new government officials. He knew the permitting process. We were able to permit and build the temple. So as I look back at the story, as a young man, I'm sitting there with a young man who was a good friend of mine, but he's from Spanish Fork, Utah. We'd known each other for years. We'd done a lot of hunting and fishing together, and I had no idea that he had connections to the Congo. But you know what? The Lord knew it. And the Lord knew someday we would need help there, the church, to build a temple. And through him, we were able to build Kinshasa. Westland Construction now has 5 African temples. They set up their business over there as well, and they're building 5 temples for us in Africa, all because of Norman. This is the ceiling room that first couple was sailed in. Another interesting story was the furniture there. We had fixed. We had all the furniture ready. We had it in a crate. We were bringing it up the river. It was there. It got stopped at customs, and they wouldn't let it into the country. And so we had to look for ways to remanufacture all the furniture. Couldn't find one that can manufacture it in the Congo, but then realized 12 years earlier, when we were building the Aba, Nigeria temple, that they also held up a truckload, not a truckload, but a sea crate load of furniture for the Aba, Nigeria, years earlier. We worked through the area office and worked with them. They released it. After 12 years, released it to us. And this is the furniture. It was first intended to go into Aba, Nigeria, and then fit perfectly in Kinshasa. Lord's in charge. The first child to parent sealing on the first day the temple was open in Kinshasa. Indianapolis, Indiana, we have a situation, of course, you know, brothers and sisters, whenever we do inspections, we have to get a letter of occupancy that allows us to occupy, which means the building official has to go through the building. We had an appointment with the building official here. He showed up. He said, "This is amazing. This is a beautiful temple." He went in, we took him through the back door into the baptistry. His first question was, why do you guys have a spa in here? Gave us an opportunity to talk to him about baptism for the dead. He looked at us a lot more funny after that. And he said, well, the architecture is amazing, and the colors and the wood. We've never seen this quality of workmanship anywhere. We then took him into the dressing rooms. This is the groom's room right here, you know, for those. And he said, why do you have dressing? Why do you have locker room here? We explained to him, we come to the temple, you bring clothes, or you rent clothing, and everyone's dressed in white as a symbol of purity, but also it puts us all on the same level, regardless of who you're sitting next to or by, you're there, and it shows respect and purity to the Lord Jesus Christ. We took him into one of the endowment rooms. He was amazed at the murals and the quality of the construction that was there. We took him into the celestial room. And he sat down in the celestial room and said, this is the first time I've ever gone through a building where I feel as much as I see. I took him into a ceiling room, explained to him what marriage for time and all eternity was. Then we took him back to the entryway so he could see the entryway. We turned to him and he said, this is miraculous. We need to have the mayor and all the city council come and see this building. We assured him there'll be an open house and they'll all be invited. We'll make sure to get on the list, and invited him to come back with his family and visit. And he said that would be wonderful. And he's about ready to leave. And of course my project manager said, you know, we would like to have the occupancy permit signed. He goes, oh, okay. And realized that he'd lost on the way. He'd set his clipboard down, didn't have his clipboard. So he went all the way back through the temple, saw the whole temple again, found his clipboard, and signed our occupancy permit that day. Pretty exciting. I think this is a special one right here. If you've been to Gilbert, Arizona temple, it's a beautiful temple. Sister temple with the same floor plan is Payson. Open house was a huge success. Many people went through. They loved the open house. They loved the ceiling rooms. But the scripture came to mind as I read one of the comments after the open house. It says, and that all people who shall enter upon the threshold of the Lord's house may feel thy power and feel constrained to acknowledge that thou hast sanctified it, and that it is in thy house a place of thy holiness. So a lady had gone through the temple, and after she'd finished the open house, she wrote, usually they don't make comments, but you make comments on a comment card, a lengthy one that says, thank you so much for allowing us to see this beautiful building and this beautiful temple. I was truly amazed, and I felt the Spirit. She said, I was really thoughtful when I went through the room that people get married in, which I think you call a ceiling room. You see, 20 years earlier, my daughter, my only daughter, was married in the Mesa temple. Because I wasn't a member of your church, I wasn't allowed to be there. Since that day, we've been estranged from each other and haven't talked to her in 20 years. Because on the greatest day of a mother's life, I was unable to be there. And then she went on to say, but going through the temple and seeing the room, the ceiling room, makes me regret my decision. I'm going to go home and call her tonight and reconcile with her, because if she was married in a place like that, then she did what was right. So anybody been downtown Salt Lake? Seen anything going on down there? It is my world right now.
Temples of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are sacred places of worship. They are considered to be houses of the Lord, where God's presence is felt. But over time, all temples require maintenance, remodeling, and renovation in order for them to last for generations to come. The Salt Lake Temple renovation is both a massive seismic upgrade that will help preserve the life of the building, as well as an extensive remodel to increase its capacity. The seismic upgrades on the Salt Lake Temple are made up of a number of integrated engineering systems designed to strengthen it and maximize movement during an earthquake. The original foundation, reinforced with concrete and steel rods, rests on a platform of cylindrical beams, also filled with concrete and reinforced with steel cables. This platform is then anchored into a massive framework of transfer beams, which are also reinforced with steel rods and cables. Together, the cylinders and the transfer beams make up the upper foundation, and after excavation, completely support the weight of the temple. Below the transfer beams rests the lower foundation. The only contact the upper foundation has with the lower foundation is through the 98 7-foot base isolators. Base isolators are mechanical devices that isolate the movement of the earth during a seismic event from the building above. In effect, the earth moves below, while the building above remains more stable. Each base isolator can support over 8 million pounds. During an earthquake, it can allow the ground to move up to 10 feet horizontally without failing. While base isolation goes a long way to prevent structural failure, it is not perfect. Movement and damage can still occur. Potential damage can be further minimized through structural reinforcement. The goal of structural reinforcement is to bind the elements of the building together, so that if it does move during an earthquake, it moves as one consolidated object and does not come apart. For the Salt Lake Temple, this reinforcement starts with the installation of steel trusses that strengthen the roof. The trusses are then anchored into a bonding beam that provides additional strength between the towers. The bonding beams are then connected into a series of steel cables that run through drilled holes in the walls and anchored into the new foundation. Once the foundation is completed, the earth beneath the horizontal beam platform is removed, and the weight of the temple through the transfer beams now rests completely on the base isolators. In addition, some of the interior walls and floor will have steel beams added, providing additional rigidity and strength to the building as a whole. Much like the original construction of the Salt Lake Temple, these seismic upgrades are both massive and complex, and designed so that this sacred, iconic temple will be in use for hundreds of years to come.
So, the last 4 years on the temple, the initial announcement, of course, came in December. The closing came in December of 2019. The last 4 years have been significant for us. We have completed 98% of all the seismic. The upper and lower foundations are intact, and the temple now is starting to rest upon the base isolators. So the majority of that difficult work is done. We're starting to build the temple back. We're adding additional square footage. I want you to, President Nelson is heavily involved and has been heavily involved in the direction of what we're doing in the temple. Specifically, I remember a day that went to a meeting together with few members of my staff and the presiding bishopric, and he announced that he wanted to increase the capacity of the Salt Lake Temple. So our capacity before was significant, but he wanted to double the capacity. So you're right in the middle of the project. You've just got it all designed. It's all done. We're starting to execute, and we're doubling the capacity, which made us go into a quick 3 or 4 month full redesign, redo all of our engineering work, and go deeper so that we could add the amenities that he wanted, because he wanted all nations, as Isaiah claimed, that came to the temple, the mountain of the Lord's house, to be able to hear it in their own language. And he said, we've got to have more. So we added a significant amount of ceiling rooms. The temple will have 23 ceiling rooms in it. It will have 17 initiatory booths per gender, 2 baptistries, 5 endowment rooms that seat well over 100 in each. So it's a significant. One of the things he talked about was the temple reconstruction, or the temple seismic should emphasize and highlights Christ's life and mission. We've accomplished that by the buildings surrounding that, 2 entry pavilions. As you enter the temple, will now be on North Temple side of it. The president wanted those that aren't members of our church or those that don't hold a temple recommend an opportunity to have a temple experience without going inside of the temple beyond the recommend desk. So we have built 2 pavilions for them. On the south side, as we've taken down the North and South Visitor Center, we added 2 new pavilions on the south side that will have a depiction of a Christus. The Christus is moved there. We'll have a cutout of the Salt Lake Temple, and below, in the basement, in a very generous space, a perpetual open house, as it were, where individuals can come through and see an actual baptistry, see a ceiling room, a celestial room, and an endowment room at any time during the temple. He wanted us to enhance, refresh, and beautify the temple and surrounding grounds. We've added significance to the grounds, of course, take care of seismic, accessibility issues.
The foundation of any building, particularly one as large as this one, must be strong and resilient enough to withstand earthquakes, corrosion, high winds, and the inevitable settling that affects all buildings. The complex task of strengthening, now underway, will reinforce this sacred temple with a foundation that can and will stand the test of time. We are sparing no effort to give this venerable temple, which had become increasingly vulnerable, a foundation that will withstand the forces of nature into the millennium. In like manner, it is now time that we each implement extraordinary measures, perhaps measures we have never taken before, to strengthen our personal spiritual foundations. Unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures.
This is what it'll look like when we're finished. Another view. The entryway from North Temple. Both on the left and right are the entry pavilions. If you're parking in the conference center parking lot, we have a tunnel that goes underneath North Temple that will bring you right up to where the recommend desk, as well as to the baptistry. So youth do not have to cross the street, they can go underneath. We also took on the church plaza, the church administration plaza. President asked us to put in flags of all nations. We have 92 flags in the plaza. This has been completed, turned over, and is open. Also, redid the trees, planted over 1,000 new trees, redid all the granite and all the pavers, redid Main Street, which is beautiful as well. And of course, Isaiah's prophecy, and it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. Northwest side of the tabernacle, just a picture of some of the work as we finish that up. There's a picture of the temple foundation. You can see that we had to strengthen the foundation before we began digging under it and into it. It's interesting if you look at I was presenting to the quorum of the 12 apostles, and Elder Uchtdorf said to me, Brent, I look at that stone and some of that looks like sandstone and not granite. Are you telling me that the story we've been telling about Johnson's army is not right? And I says, Elder Uchtdorf, I'm not telling you anything. But I'm telling you, that's not granite. So what we found, if you look at Wilford Woodruff's writing, even in Saints, Volume 2, when Johnson's army came in through and they covered the temple and went back and found cracks in the temple, they replaced a topping slab. So they took the cracks out of the top, and in the topping slab, they put in a level of granite. So you can see clear to the top, that's a granite level, followed by the traditional rubble-type footings that they built buildings of that time in. Just finishing up right here before our major pour of the upper foundation, which has now been done. You can see the significant post-tensioning cable. We have 275 miles of post-tensioning cable that pre-stresses all the concrete going through. Picture looking north to the conference center, to the south, to South Temple. We also undertook the Beehive and Lion House. They'll be open at the same time, redoing them and redoing the exhibits and renovating them, bringing them up to code. You can see some of the workers putting the rebar in. If you haven't ever worked with rebar, that's a tough job. They were working with number 18 rebar, which is about this big around. Just the biggest I've ever seen and ever worked on any job that we've had. This was prior to our pour. We did a pour that was a consecutive pour for about 15 hours. There was 400 trucks and just over 3,500 cubic yards of concrete. We did it one week and one the next. And what it'll look like when it's done. So to the right, as you walk in, that's the recommend desk. You can be able to look up into some skylights and see the temple as you walk into the temple there. To the left is a grand hall and the lobby. This is the grand stair that takes us from the annex portion of it, or the north addition, into the main temple. The historic temple is the wall at the top of the stairs. Of course, we have elevators put in for everything now. This is just the finishes in the pavilion, where President really wanted to have a temple experience for non-temple recommend holders. Rendering of the baptistry, of which we have 2. Rendering of one of the 5 historic endowment rooms. And the celestial room, which was refurbished, refurbishing, resanding, approximately 7 to 9 layers of paint in that room. Some people say, why on earth is your hallways green? Because down about the time, the last layer, it was green. And so during President McKay's period of time, everything was painted white, but we believe the actual color was a beautiful green. So we'll bring it back. We promise you that you'll love the results. They'll emphasize a highlight life, ministry, mission of Jesus Christ, and his desire to bless every kindred tongue and people. So I want to leave just a few minutes for anybody that has a question. Any question about anything?
I've got a son that told me he wanted me to ask you one question.
Okay.
At what point will it become necessary
I can tell you the earthquake that happened during construction was very beneficial for us. It was significant because at that time, of course, we had all of our seismic monitors during construction on the temple so that we could see if the temple was moved. The last thing I wanted was to knock the temple down accidentally, of course. And so we actually registered all of it and allowed us to take those seismic readings or those movement readings and apply those to our modeling, and found that our modeling was correct. Now, when it comes to earthquake insurance, I can't answer that question for you, but the Salt Lake Temple will be there. It'll be all right. Other questions? Go ahead.
I believe President Nelson made a statement that the Salt Lake Temple, with this renovation, with these upgrades, will stand.
Yeah, he did. I asked him when the millennium was. And he says, nobody knows. I said, well, President, you would know more. Yeah, so I didn't get a response. So the key is that you prepare for it. But other questions? Brothers and sisters, thank you for the opportunity to spend time with you today. I'm sorry if it was a little technical for you or somewhat boring, but I just want you to know that regardless of, the nuts and bolts and concrete and rebar and base isolators and all those things we've talked about today, that the important thing is the covenants that you make in the temple. I remember as a young man going to the Logan Temple where I was endowed in the Logan Temple prior to going on my mission, and I'll always remember that. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. The ordinance has not changed. The delivery of it's changed a little bit since then. And we have temples all over the earth to be able to accomplish that. But I bear testimony that we are led by the Lord Jesus Christ, that we have a prophet of God on the earth that heeds his counsel and directs us in the way that we're supposed to be going with the Lord. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.